Hello and welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel in the first place. Today we have Saw You in a Dream chapters 15 and 16 by Fiction Please on AO3. The link will be in the description, and let's go ahead and get into it. You can add loud banging on the door to the long list of annoying things your mom has done to wake you up. It was so early that it was still dark out. Pulling on your airport outfit, the air was silent, but for the distant sound of the coffee maker. Time to go. Your mom's voice was low, no emphasis, no anger, nothing. She hauled her stuff into the trunk and sat in the driver's seat, waiting as you did the same. When you joined her, she turned on the radio. It was already flipped to the news station. It turned out to be a 13-hour trip, and for most of it, you were fast asleep. Before you landed, though, you got to catch sight of the view. The city looked tiny, being so high up in the clouds, blinking lights illuminating from the otherwise dark buildings that acted like their own stars from where you were. Everything else went to plan, thankfully. Soon enough, you were in another car. Your mom pulled out her phone. The navigating voice led y'all to the destination. It only took a couple turns and passing under warm-lit streetlights before you two arrived. The house was bigger than you expected, with green accents and brown brick. Several large hedges lined the sidewalk, leading to the door. She parked and immediately hopped out, all her staleness from earlier gone. You sighed, popping open the door and making your way to the back. "Oh, hi, I missed you so much." Your head turned at the excited squeals. Some belonged to your mother, but the others were coming from a blonde woman you didn't recognize. Her hair was unusually spiky. She seemed nice. Her eyes caught onto yours as she turned back into the house for a second. When she returned, there was an identically haired boy in her grasp. He swatted the fingers she'd pinched on his ear to pull him out. He was wearing a black shirt with a white skull printed on the front. Realizing you were staring, you shook your head and whirled back to the full trunk. "Listener, this is Katsuki. He will be helping you with your bags. Right, Katsuki?" Her voice took on the form of a growl when saying his name the second time. He rolled his eyes, walking up to you with his hands in his pockets. "Bakugou?" He yelled back. "What do you think I'm doing? Damn!" You cringed, not used to regular yelling matches. The one from last night was barely anything, and you still couldn't stop thinking about it. He barely even gave you a glance before reaching in and pulling out a suitcase. It was the only suitcase you brought. There was no way he could have known, but now you had nothing to carry. Not wanting to look like an idiot, you took out one of your mom's bags. Following him back in, his mom let you know that he'd show you to your room. You thanked her and tried to stay quiet behind him. Climbing the stairs, you saw pictures lined on the wall. A family of 3, like you, how yours used to be. As the photos progressed with age, you noticed how the little boy with sparks in his palms slowly lost his smile. Looking forward again, you realized he was already at the top. Glaring down at you, he jerked his head towards the room. You sped up, following him down the hallway now, trying to break the ice, or at least get rid of some of the awkwardness. You made an attempt at conversation. "So, you have an explosion quirk?" You forced some interest in your voice. The long flight gave you a headache, and it was already dark outside, making you want to be in bed even more. "None of your business?" His answer was clipped, rash. Okay, sorry I guess," you stammered. Guess he wasn't a fan of small talk. Finally, he reached the door. It led into a plain room with generic decorations scattered across the walls. He threw your bag on the bed and walked out. You listened as the steps got quieter with distance. Taking a deep breath, you flopped back onto the comforter. It engulfed you, and you watched as the fan above turned round and round. Your eyes blurred themselves, and your brain begged for your eyes to close. A nap. All you needed was a simple nap. But it was nighttime and way past dinner. Still, everyone ordered food and now gathered downstairs. You awoke to their voices, along with the knock at your door. Behind it stood the frowny boy with a bag of food. He stuck it out, and you took it silently. Before he could sprint off again, you reached for his arm. He lurched back at your touch, confused and upset. You rambled. "Bathroom? Where is it?" you asked, hand now gripping the greasy paper bag. He huffed, looking down the hall. "It's 2 doors down, easy to find, even for an extra like you," he replied. "An extra?" You were starting to think there was no hope for this week. Your eyes narrowed and watched as he stomped back into his own room, right across from yours. Eating on the empty desk, you turned on the TV. It was set to some home renovation show, and you let it play, too lazy to go flipping through the channels. Looking around the room, you couldn't help missing your own. Getting homesick sucks. Only 5 more days. At least until next month. You groaned at the thought. Finished and now full, you grabbed your stuff and walked out to take a shower. Your body was running on low power mode at this point, wanting to knock out, but still wanting to feel clean, especially after sitting in the stuffy plane for so long. As soon as you opened your door, so did the one across the hall. Meeting eyes with Katsuki, you noticed he was also holding his shower essentials. You waited an extra second and took off to the bathroom. You heard him close behind, but ended up shutting the door in his face. His hand met the wood once and then retreated. He let out a breathy laugh, cringing at the pounding response your head gave. No sleep equals a head hurting. Good to know. The bath helped. The water soaked through your tense muscles and left a warm feeling inside. Slipping into your comfy pair of pajamas felt like literal heaven. When you opened the door again, you felt rejuvenated. The parents were still downstairs, catching up and chatting. Katsuki was still against the wall, face stuck in his phone. He looked up at hearing you, and you gave a sly smile. He gave an icy stare before going in to shower as well. Getting back to your room, you got ready for bed. The sheets welcomed your sleepy mind, enveloping you in a soft hug. Everyone knew the feeling. It was terrifying, like you had just jumped off the ledge of a tall building. The feeling of falling was different from your previous experiences. Now there was fear. Hot and blazing fear traveled up your bones. It only lasted a second until you sprang up in bed. The sheets bunched up around you while you took deep breaths, trying to slow the racing of your heart. You scanned the blanket wrapped around you, seeing it was the same one from home, from your own room, but as your eyes jumped from wall to wall, you didn't recognize any of the posters pinned up. The only thing similar were the vines hanging above your head. Besides that, and the desk, everything else was completely different. It was a meshed up version of both of your rooms into one. Pro-hero memorabilia was put up throughout the room. Several figurines were even scattered on the bookshelf ledges. It was full of manga, and by full, you meant full. Every individual shelf was packed to the rim, with small stacks on top of others. All this added together made you blind to the sleeping Katsuki beside you. You poked him, mind recalling the events of your actual day. He gasped, quickly sitting up. Unlike you, his eyes didn't investigate the renewed setting or wonder why it had changed. Instead, they caught onto you, and his hands grabbed your shoulders, grip firm but not painful. "Is everything okay? You're so stupid. You could have at least tried sleeping last night. I was left on the cliff all night, afraid I'd leave before you got there." The words were slurred, said all in one breath, until he abruptly stopped speaking, thoughts racing to meet his words. Wait. You laughed, nodding. While your first thoughts after waking up tonight were of plane flights, a new place to sleep, and jet lag, his were full of arguments with his mom, locking himself in his room in hopes he'd be left alone, and then getting dragged downstairs to help some new family unload and unpack. Not to mention the weird but curious encounter he had with the kind-eyed stranger who raced him to the bathroom, and won. The stranger who now isn't so strange. Watching, you saw as he finally realized Awake him had truly met you, and vice versa. It wasn't under the best of circumstances, but neither of you could muster up a care. The only thing that mattered was that the chance was there, but clearly the world wasn't giving any free handouts. Meeting you face to face and talking still wasn't enough to summon your late-night adventures. You spoke up, breaking the steady, faraway chirps of crickets. I know. So, you weren't lying about being a jerk, huh? You hit his shoulder, still a little bit upset about his attitude earlier. Shut up. His words had no backing in them, lips turned up into a crooked smile. You gave one back and stood up to stretch. Walking towards the unfamiliar setup, you asked him, "This all your stuff?" You sure weren't lying about being an All Might fan either. He let out a whistle. Every poster was different. In some, he was a young man with a blue cape flowing behind him. In others, he was older, age showing through his smile. He wasn't the only pro hero adorning the walls, though. There were so many others. Some you recognized and some you didn't. And this isn't my bed. You turned at Katsuki's voice. He was holding up the comforter like he was scared of it. You rolled your eyes and he laughed, letting it fall back down. He moved to the edge of the bed, looking to your desk. He noticed the pictures on the corkboard collage above it. He walked up to them, eyes roving from photo to photo. You had déjà vu. Having done the same thing only hours earlier at his house. His hand lifted, finger stopping on a certain snapshot. You and your dad were smiling. You held a slushie in one hand and the phone in the other. He held his own and had two fingers up in a peace sign. He loved making fun of your go-to picture gesture. "This is your dad?" Katsuki asked. You gave a sad smile, nodding. "He seems like a good guy." You agreed. He was. Realizing how heavy the air felt, Katsuki moved to look at the shelves. His shelves. Besides the desk. His idea of changing the subject quickly switched to terror. He started pulling out different volumes, shoving them under his arm and tossing them out your open window. You gasped, pulling his arm and trying to get him to stop. He didn't budge, not surprising, seeing how much bulkier he was. You grabbed a volume that he was reaching for before he could take it. He lunged for you, but you swiftly moved out of his way. At least you thought you did. 1 second, you were reading the glossy cover of a manga. The next, you were being tackled onto the bed. You huffed out. His chest hovered above yours, and you did your best to keep the manga away from his grabby hands. Your eyes widened at the white printed tile. "Is this a volume of Horimiya?" You felt as his head fell dramatically on your chest in response. "Yes." His voice was muffled by your shirt fabric. It vibrated through you. You laughed, making his head bobble on you. You lightly hit him with it, not used to his bashfulness. "Katsuki, if I look out the window right now, am I going to find a bunch of other romance manga volumes?" You asked, already knowing the answer. He stayed silent, simply nodding against you. The tips of his hair tickled the bottom of your face. A certain person popped into your head at the thought of his hair. "You get your looks from your mom," you stated in a murmur. "Just an observation." He groaned, sitting back up. His lazy gaze latched onto yours. "Sure, whatever," he said with almost no sting. You could tell he was turned off by the mention of his mom, though, and it was understandable to say the least. Your mind tends to work like a web of ideas, jumping from point to point until settling on something. This made conversations a bit confusing for the other person, but they always managed to catch up, most of the time. Wait, speaking of that, we need to figure out how to remember and awake us connect the dots. We're literally a room apart. It's not impossible anymore. Your grin was bright, thinking it could all work out now, having nothing in the way. He gave a grim one in return, chuckling. Replying, he said, "Oh yeah, that's super easy, seeing how great we get along up there." You bit the inside of your cheek, realizing he was right. "Well, if you weren't so hard to work with," you started. He cut you off. "My mom didn't tell me you two were coming until the day before, so sorry if I'm not being as hospitable as you would like, but a bit more warning would have been nice." His words came out fast and gruff, a blur of feelings. You stopped body still. "Maybe our moms aren't so different after all," you said under your breath. He read your lips, eyebrow raised in confusion. Before he had a chance to ask about your cryptic response, though, he felt the creeping of the morning. He noticed it too, rolling his eyes. You laughed, too tired to think of anything to say. There's no doubt you two would be speaking soon anyway. Your peripheral view was getting fuzzy, causing your line of vision to be impaired, save for Katsuki. You wanted to shake the feeling away, push it so you'd have more time, sick of waking up to a reality-filled world. It was as though all the events and sights and feelings you had during that amount of time would sneak out of your mind and leave empty gaps in their wake. The body and brain had small blockers, something not even all the technology in the world could understand. These blockers locked into place the second you stepped out of REM sleep, not opening back up again until you're in that state. Now, blockers up and body awake, you could sense the light through the blinds, showing through the thin layer of your closed eyelids. It burned, and your bones ached as you stretched out your limbs. Groaning, you turned over and smothered your face in the annoyingly soft pillow. If not for the collection of loud noises and remarks from downstairs, you might have just stayed in bed all day, watching as the hours slowly passed. But you didn't, deciding to get up and get put together, only to go downstairs and realize there was no reason to go through all the trouble. Alright, that's the end of this one. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you have a great rest of your day, night, whatever, and I hope to see you in the next one. Goodbye!